Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Zach Golden, and welcome to another Starbase Weekly live stream. Happy to be with you guys. It's been about, I don't know, a month and a half since the last time I've been able to be on the show, so happy to finally be back. Feel like I was having like withdrawals or something, so glad to finally end that. And yeah, it's going to be a great show. We have a lot to cover this week. There are tons of updates. We're getting very close to the next launch, and got a lot of details about, I guess, the procedures that's going to be done for the next launch. So we'll talk about that stuff towards the end of the show. I think it's a little bit more pertaining to like the launch site stuff, so it makes more sense to talk about it at the end. But in the meantime, I'm going to introduce our other guests that we have for us today. First, we have Nate. Nate, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. It's been a bit since I've been on, and it's an exciting episode to be a part of. And so I'm looking forward to all the various things we're going to study and look at today.
Awesome. And we also have Lawrence joining us today.
And honored to be here as always, especially on an episode with Zach. And yeah, there's so many changes to go over and the new flight details.
Agreed. And then we also have Astro Joe, who will be handling questions and donations for us.
Awesome, Zach. Glad to have you back. Yeah, it's been quite a dry spell. Sorry we missed you with all the weather issues and the flight issues and plane issues and all of that. But let's dive right in. This is going to be a good show.
Yeah, that's just how it works out. I was really excited my last 2 weeks off, and then I just like noticed the weather that first week, and then the second week too. I was like, okay, well, this just would work out this way, where I, the weather prevents flyovers on these 2 weeks, but it is what it is. Yeah, so I'm actually really excited to talk about the launch site, but obviously we're going to wait to cover that till the end. But as most of y'all can see, the foundation for the second orbital launch tower is finally being excavated. So that's going to be really exciting to talk about. There's lots of details with that. I'm sure y'all will have tons of questions when we get to that as well too. But as always, we're going to go ahead and start over at the Massi site. where it appears that everything is finally looking kind of clean. This is like the first time we've ever really seen um, the site after it looks like they've actually went and swept everything away. So I was kind of shocked when I saw this. I was like, oh, okay, it might be static fire time.
Yeah, it definitely gives that idea that they're getting ready to start moving forward with testing that static fire stand.
Yeah, it's crazy how clean it looks now, and you can really tell that they're preparing to actually perform this first static fire test with Ship 26. Um, I'm still on the fence about if this is the only thing they were saving Ship 26 for, especially with all of the um, extra reinforcements that they installed on it. I would like to believe that this is not all done just for them to use it on the test stand.
Yeah, I'm on Team 26 at times. I know a lot of folks are ready for 26 to die, but you just can't help but think that it's sticking around for something.
Honestly, I think it would be hilarious if they end up flying this still.
Oh, I can't think of. There's so many people that I will mess with if that was to happen.
I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be a nice little plot twist, I would say.
Fingers crossed.
But yeah, this is the first time I think we've seen the maintenance platform after it's moved back. Um, the previous 2 weeks they had it in the service position, and now you can actually kind of see that they're really ready for that first test. Yesterday they actually performed a small tanking test, and I do have one image from Starship Gazer that I'll show really quick. It's not much to see right here, but the Gazer was pretty far away, but he was able to get some images. I personally got pretty excited for this because I thought they were about to finally perform that test, but I think they were just verifying that all the GSE works. So you can see the little frost line on the bottom of the ship down here, and that was pretty much about all they did. So it was tough to tell whether or not they actually loaded anything in the methane tank because we didn't see a frost line on that. But I think this is a good sign that they are probably nearing that first test. I think we should probably see maybe like a full cryo test first. But I guess they've already verified that the actual system is working as far as the GSE goes. What we don't know is if they've tested the actual water system yet. So I imagine that before they perform that static fire test, they're going to want to do their first test on the actual water deluge system, which I think it's tough to say whether or not that's actually happened. I was watching it pretty close yesterday on one of Lab Padre's or his rocket ranch camera, just trying to hope to see like some sign that they're actually testing this. But we have not seen that yet. So
Well,
I think
some test with the tanks. If you zoom in on the 3 tanks, you can see where they've at least blown out the little top, kind of the valves there. And you can see where the
right.
tanks are dirty. So they've at least done some preliminary testing with it.
Oh, yeah, I didn't notice that before. That's a good sign right there. Is
Last
there
week,
anything?
the manifolds were missing some of their caps, and that's all capped off too on the top edge. And so they got to be getting close to testing this.
Yeah, it's looking pretty nice. This is a much different system than what they have at the launch site. I've actually been working on an episode just explaining all of this because it's a pretty interesting the way they constructed all of this. And now that it's finished, I think it's cool to kind of wrap everything up and do one full explanation about everything that went into constructing this and how this water system works and what makes it different from the launch site.
So it's different. Is it better or just different?
I don't know. I think this is like pretty unique in some ways. I mean, with the other system at the launch site uses basically a charged gas system. So they pre-fill all these the gas cylinders and then use those to force the water out. And this one is more of an active system where it's generating the gas as the water is flowing out. So it's like an active pressure building system.
Interesting.
So that's going to be interesting to see how well that works. I looked around at the McGregor Falcon 9 test stand, and also one of the vertical. I think it's I don't know if it's the Raptor test stand or if it's the Merlin test stand, but they both use similar flame buckets, but this system is not present there. So I think they use just the vertical water tower, which basically generates its own pressure just by being high off the ground with using hydrostatic pressure. So this is, as far as I can tell, a pretty unique system. I'm really hoping that we get some drone shots from SpaceX, because that'll be one of the only ways we actually get to see this in action, because any other cameras are going to be pretty far away and you won't really get to see the activation of the water system at all.
No, you'll just see some flamey stuff above the tree line, hopefully.
Yeah.
In pipes, and looks like they're starting to fill the tanks.
Yeah, you can see a water tanker over here offloading water into these tanks, which I guess is a good sign that they aren't exactly ready to go yet. I wonder if the first test that they did with this was with the tanks empty. I'm not sure how often we've seen water tankers offloading here. I know that we've seen liquid nitrogen tankers offloading into this tank right here, but I don't think we've seen actual water tankers in previous weeks yet.
That's the first one that I've seen, and that's why I recognized it right away.
Well, it's a fantastic sign. I'm gonna be on the lookout for that pretty much the whole week. I know usually Lab Padres Rocket Ranch cameras kind of turn towards the Sanchez site and the build site, but hopefully we'll probably keep that turned around in the other direction this week, so we'll actually be able to catch this when it happens. Let's see. So what else do we have to cover at the Massi's site? I guess we have the new test stand that they're working on over here. Oh, well, before we get to that, one of the other things that they've got going on here is preparing for additional liquid oxygen storage tanks. So as far as we know, these 3 tanks right here are liquid oxygen tanks, and then you have the larger one over here. And then they have the pedestal right here, which they appear to still be waiting on an additional tank. And as y'all can tell, they have a, I don't know, is this a CFA drilling rig? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it looks like they're preparing to do the drilling for 2 additional LOX tanks, which is interesting because I'm surprised this isn't enough for one ship. I
They
mean,
use
for the most
LOX in
part,
their current testing for cryo testing, don't they? They use LOX and liquid nitrogen.
yeah, that's true. So they typically, I guess, use LOX in the LOX tank and then liquid nitrogen in the nitrogen tank, and sometimes they use nitrogen in both. But yeah, I guess it makes sense if you have it available to use liquid oxygen. So if you want to do concurrent testing, so have a booster out here at the same time as a ship on the 2 cryo stations, and then also have a ship ready to perform a static fire test, then you probably want as much capacity as you can possibly hold out here.
Yeah. When you're doing those, various cryo tests, you recapture most of that, but if you actually static fire, you lose it. So having that extra capacity probably is a good thing.
Especially if Block 2 is coming online, and from what we've been told, they're supposed to hold a little more propellants as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So you definitely need that additional capacity for those. And as far as we can tell, it seems like this test stand over here is going to require at least liquid nitrogen, I believe. So we have 2 gas lines and then a cryo line going in here. So I think we'll see a QD platform up here. And that'll probably have, I'm guessing these are both pre-press lines, and then this one right here will be liquid nitrogen, which will probably be, I'm guessing, split between the 2 tanks, which is weird. I'm surprised there's not 2 lines going there.
It's been interesting watching this kind of mature as they build it out. I'm interested with the QD and how they're going to, do that. Obviously, the test vehicles, they don't necessarily, or items, they don't necessarily have normal QDs because that platform lines up directly with a leg in the middle.
Yeah, right. So it's there's going to be essentially another column going up right here, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, that doesn't make really a whole lot of sense to me. I'm extremely confused about.
I'm just having to remember that most of these test articles, how the pressurization is. It rarely they have a normal QD on them. It's always something kind of homebrewed for
Like
that
a hose,
individual
just a
piece.
hose going to the
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe the
Yeah.
hose will just go around the column.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
so, especially since I believe we've been seeing that S-32 has the more like the booster style press plate versus the regular current Block 1 ship.
Right. Do we have any more thoughts on the purpose of this? I mean, it's been a little bit confusing to me just because, they already had the can crusher, which seemed to work for all the booster testing they needed to do and even some ship testing. And then they had the nose cone jail, which is still here, so it doesn't look like they're getting rid of it or using this to replace it. So any more thoughts on why this is needed versus just continuing to use the can crusher?
I've been thinking this just on a similar pathway. I think this may have been built for HLS and NASA structural testing.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well too, because with HLS they will essentially, I imagine they mostly would be testing the payload section of the vehicle, or I guess the crew section of the vehicle, and not necessarily the actual the LOX and methane tanks, because those are pretty much the same as a normal starship. I had a thought that potentially this could be used for like static fire testing of the RCS thrusters on there. I don't know if that's what you want to call them, the hot gas thrusters. I don't think we have an actual name for them since they haven't named those engines yet. But if you were to put a ship on a normal test stand like that static fire test stand, and then you were testing those thrusters way on the top, then you could be putting a lot of force, or like rotational force, a lot of torque on the actual ship, causing it to like want to lean to the side if you didn't have equal thrust on all sides. So I figured maybe this cage would allow them to like strap it down or something, so that if they were testing those kind of thrusters, that it's actually a little bit more stable. But as far as we've seen so far, they don't have any like methane going to this, and only liquid nitrogen. So that kind of throws that idea out the window.
Yeah, I think this is just a mature structural test stand. They test stand to rule all test stands. As all of this infrastructure around Starbase has matured, we've seen new things come online that kind of replace the almost handmade things they started in the beginning. And I almost wonder if they're going to start testing tanks kind of where you test an oxygen tank and you test a methane tank before you actually ever mate them. Does that make sense? Kind of like you see other places do, and this is going to give them that capacity to test whether they want to pull on it, twist it, fill it, do all those things. They'll have a test article where they can just do it all in one module. That's what I think this is going to be.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting
Yeah.
because. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, especially with the 14.1 test article they're building in Megabase 1 now. I think that may be coming.
The first test article for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that as well. I mean, that's really the only test article we've seen currently under construction. Although, if there is an HLS test article, then that would probably be in the Star Factory right now. We may not see it until it's ready because that building's pretty much tall enough to probably stack a full payload section inside of that building and then roll it out when it's ready.
Yeah. A couple other things about this stand is they've poured it up with concrete up to that first ring, but each subsequent ring is designed to be poured full of concrete. So the entire stand, when it's done, will be concrete filled.
Yeah, you can see that on here.
Those are actually plates. Those are not poured yet. If you look at the right one, it's missing a plate. We thought it was concrete, and then we discovered the plate was missing. But they've covered the holes. If you look at previous weeks, there's 4 holes in each of those arcs. If you go to the piece above that hadn't been lifted yet, you can see the holes, and that's where they partially pour the concrete through. Yep. And they'll pour it to that point, and then they'll stop.
Wow. So the rings are filled too?
Yep, rings and legs. Sure are.
Jeez, that's
It's
pretty serious.
gonna be there.
That's intense.
Yeah, it's gonna be able to flex some stuff.
Wow. Yeah, and so as far as we can tell, it'll be at least 3 levels tall.
If you look at these other legs, they have lead-ins on top of them. So something's going to go on top of those legs. Now, whether it's a full level or something to cap them, which wouldn't be a cap. There's definitely going to be another level of some sort.
So 4, potentially 4 levels tall.
Potentially 4. Which would, you kind of get into an area where that would make sense, especially when you start dealing with stretched variants of the booster and stretched variants of the ship. If you want to, test a stretched oxygen tank, you'd want to go ahead and build this tall enough that that's something that you'd have the capacity to do with it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because, they never did structural tests on like a full booster tank or a full, like either of the LOX tank or the methane tanks. So it's interesting that they would need to do that now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess we'll have to, as always, continue to keep our eyes out on that. Is there anything else at the Massi site that we want to touch on? Let's see here. Let me get a full view.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Massi's is slightly going to become boring for us now because they're nearing completion on most of this stuff.
There are some weird, they've got hydraulic cylinders right behind the white building right there where that red crane is down. Yeah, there's that. Next building over.
Oh.
Yeah.
Building. Grab another image.
Yeah, there are those weird black things. If you look where that crane is, we're not really sure what those are.
These look similar to. They had similar versions of these for the can crusher. They would set them inside of the can crusher, and I think they were doing some sort of test with that.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks very similar. But here's another one right here. It was a larger version of it, seems like. Interesting. I'm going to apologize in advance because my dog's laying on the ground here next to me, and she sounds like she's about to start snoring, so hopefully that doesn't come through. But yeah, cool. So let's, shall we go ahead and move over to the Sanchez site? Actually, let's take any questions if we have any.
Yeah, let me clear my queue here. I want to thank Flippers79 Flip Diaz for gifting a membership, as well as Methane Man gifting 10, Callistia Lee gifting 10 memberships, Jake Winlow gifting 5. I want to thank Kenneth Coates, who gave a $20 PayPal last week after we signed off, and Jeremy Graff for a $5 PayPal donation support for your flyovers that I've watched over the years. He says, thank you very much. I also have a $10 super chat from Sharpie. Toot, toot, choo, choo. Thank you all for that support. It helps keep RGV flying. I appreciate that. Brian Illenberg has a question. If they won't, if they fly Ship 26 and they won't for so many reasons, what would they be wanting to achieve?
You want to answer, Zach? You want me to give my shot?
I don't really have an opinion.
The only way, okay, so for the first flight, they outlined 3 flights. They outlined a flight for um, the first flight, and then the second 2 flights were supposed to be 26 and 27. They both were supposed to do re-entries, of course, without shielding and stuff, and they were going to study what happened to a unshielded ship when it broke up in re-entry. Whether 26 flies or not, I still think at some point we're going to see a ship like this fly. If you're a customer and you are wanting to put something so heavy into orbit that you want to expend a ship, then SpaceX isn't going to want to sell you one of their ships that's tiled and has all the other bits on it, the fairings, the flaps and whatnot. And so getting data from a ship like this of what happens when it re-enters ballistically without any of that is something that's going to be important at some point. And that's what 26 was supposed to do. Of course, 26 has a payload bay, but no door. 27 was the one that had the door. So that was basically what 26 was supposed to do, and would be the same idea of something it could do if they flew it now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would have to agree that, well, I guess let me take a step back. I think they potentially have a partial demonstration of that with Ship 29 because of the fact that it, essentially re-entered at least on its side. So it wasn't, fully unshielded, but at least partially unshielded. And I think they have a good idea of how much that one broke up. Or maybe, I don't know if they ever went out to the landing zone to figure out exactly what happened to it after it came back in. But yeah, I think that's still a good point. And on the point of whether or not this is being scrapped, as I mentioned at the beginning, that it would be interesting if this was purely being used just to verify the systems of this. I have considered that in the past, and I really don't think that's what's going on here, because with both of the cryo testing stations, they used ships that they were actually going to fly. I think they used Ship 25 for the cryo stand, if I'm not mistaken, and then they used booster 10 for the second cryo station.
What's funny is when they used 25, everyone assumed that meant 25 was done, just like they're assuming this means 26 is finally done. When 25 came to that the cryo stand to commission it, everyone immediately started thinking about FOD and said, well, obviously 25 is not going to fly. And so I don't know 26 fly or not. I don't really, I'm not going to lose sleep over whether or not it does, but don't count it out.
And one thing I'll add also is the first HLS mission is supposed to be an uncrewed skeletal mission just to prove they can land on the moon. So who knows?
Yeah, good point.
All right. Another one related to Ship 26 from Kenan Copeland. Do you expect Ship 26 to conduct at least a single engine static fire?
I think it may start with a single engine static fire, but I would imagine they'll probably do a full 6-engine test.
Yeah, I would agree on that.
All right. Crane Man asking, with the new test stand, would it be able to mimic the impact force of the chopsticks on the booster during catching?
I suppose that's a possibility.
I know one of the reasons that's a thought is that test article has the booster nubs on it, that 14.1. And so that's been some of the thought is, could it mimic? I'm sure to some extent it could put the forces on it.
I feel like the booster should be at near zero velocity and almost hovering when it comes into land. So I don't know if it makes sense to need to test something like that, but I mean, if it comes in any hotter, I feel like you'd be worried about whether the chopsticks can withstand it and not necessarily the booster. Especially since the landing rails uh, are raised up, and when the booster comes down on top of it, they are it essentially like cushions it to lower it back down slowly. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sold on that idea.
Yeah, I think it just has the nubs just to make it easier to lift with the crate into the test stand.
Yeah, that would make sense.
All right, another one related to that test stand. That QD platform, James Sanford asks, that QD platform by the new Crusher test stand seems really large and has 2 floors. Perhaps it's also for ancillary equipment for testing the hardware, hydraulic compressors, etc.
Yeah, it seems like there's some additional equipment down here. It's tough to say what it actually is. Um, I think it's nearly impossible to get a ground view that will show what's in there because of the fact that the this large column is in front of it. But you can definitely tell there's some additional stuff back here. I'm not really sure what I don't really have an opinion on that one. But there's going to be something else on top of here as well too. You can see they've got a little outline for something else that's going to go inside of here. So I don't know. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that?
I just remembered all the hydraulic stuff that was on the can crusher around the perimeter of it, and I'm sure on this test stand they're going to possibly consolidate that down, so that would make sense of why this cube is so big.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree.
One of the interesting things about this is there doesn't really necessarily seem to be any penetrations coming through here unless it's just this little opening right here for the pipes to come up through. So I'm not fully sold that the QD will actually be up here because, you know, if there is a actual QD up here, you would think that the opening would be behind this and not in front of it.
Yeah.
All right. Related to this view here, Crane Man asks, isn't the upper ring on this picture larger in diameter compared to the lower one?
It
I
looks like
think
it's in this angle, but I don't know.
it is built on the same kind of construction base. They have embeds, so it's just an optical illusion, I guess, because the lower picture, the beams, the columns are so much thicker, and I just think you've got an optical illusion of it being bigger.
Yeah, when you look at it from other angles, it kind of looks
Look as
the same.
yeah.
You'll probably measure it at some point. I think I haven't broken out that tool in a while, but probably measure it just to verify later. Cool. So shall we move on to Sanchez?
Yeah, that'll do.
Alrighty then. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I'll move that over. So moving over to the Sanchez site. And actually, hold on. I think that's the wrong one as well. All my pictures are out of order here. Still struggling to get OBS to work correctly, so doing this the old school way again this week. But yeah, now that we are at the Sanchez site, y'all can see that it's looking pretty packed with tower sections over here, and it's really cool to actually see these finally over at the Sanchez site. Yeah, this is pretty impressive. I want to see it from the side. Actually, we have a good side angle view of this. And as y'all can tell, this was right at, after they finished delivering. This is the second tower section?
Segment 6.
Okay, number 6. Yeah, so this is shortly after they after the truck dropped it off, and it looks like they basically offload it or set it down on these little pads right here, and then use the SPMTs to maneuver it into position. So yeah, I think now that these are here, we'll probably start seeing them outfit them with all of the cryo tubes. Um, and sorry, my dog's sitting here like scratching herself. um, yeah, we'll probably see them start outfitting them with all the cryo tubes. And then, really the only other thing that we're pretty much waiting on is the remaining two sections that are over at KSC, which is very interesting that those haven't moved yet because, it's been about almost 2 months now, if not 3, and they've just still been sitting there. So,
One of the last flyovers, the one section, and I don't know which one is which. One section had almost been fully reassembled, and the ladders had been put in place, and they had begun reassembling the other section. So I would imagine they're getting close to being ready to transport them.
Yeah, as well as they were putting together the carriage for the chopsticks. So it looks like they're getting ready to move soon.
yeah, I'll be surprised if they don't move within the next like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I would agree.
And on I guess in other news about the Sanchez site, what we're kind of expecting here. So once they actually finish with the tower, there's going to be this just massive area in the middle where, there's pretty much going to be nothing here. And we do know that Elon said that they plan to move the essentially the rocket garden will be moving over to the front of the facility closer to the highway. So we don't know if that's going to be against this wall or if it'll be kind of in the middle right here. But I think it kind of makes a little more sense to have it in the middle because there's a lot more area for maneuvering.
And I got a nice big space out there too to at some point start constructing an OLM.
Yeah, that's a good point. I still wonder if the launch mount will be constructed here or if it will be constructed, behind closed doors at the Hangar M facility in sorry, what's that facility called? It's not KSC. The Cape Canaveral Base.
Canaveral.
Yeah, Space Force Base.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a feeling they may do it behind closed doors. Even though these walls are pretty tall, constructing it here will allow us to see a lot of things that they may not want us to see this time around. So I would not be surprised if they don't bring it here.
Yeah, because as far as, they could already have been constructing it now that they moved the second ring out of Hangar M.
Right. Yeah, as far as we know, it could already be under construction. I do wonder if the actual superstructure of it will remain the same, or if it's going to be something completely different. So, we haven't seen the foundation for the launch mount here yet, so it's really up in the air what we're going to be expecting. Obviously, the tower's going to be the same, but we don't know much about the launch mount. So, as far as we know, it could be something completely different.
Yeah, I think the ring might stay the same because they really like that 20 Raptor boost on it. But I think the legs are going to look a lot more like the static fire stand at Massey's now.
Yeah, I'm still on the fence about whether or not they'll use the same method for starting the engines because
you know how I feel about that, Zach?
What was that?
I said, you know how I feel about that. Well, not feel about it, but you know my thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's just a lot of extra components, and I think they may potentially want to change the clamp system altogether and just use a simplified version of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they ditch that altogether and use a larger QD or multiple QDs on the side of the booster and start the engines that way instead of having actual QDs on the Raptor. I think there's a good chance that they may move away from that, but that's going to be pretty much impossible to know until we actually see that launch mount and or start seeing the next version of the aft section on the boosters.
Yeah, a lot of stuff to watch for in the days to come.
Yeah.
And they can hide so much of it now.
Yeah, that part really sucks. So let's see, what else do we have going on here? We still have these transport stands under construction. I'm pretty positive this one's finished. They're still working on the third one. We got I believe this is the third booster cap right here. And then I believe this is a fourth ship work stand, like an engine stand right here. Possibly. It looks similar with the
Yeah,
sections.
they just had that piece of fixture that they built that we weren't. I think it went to Star Factory.
Right.
That was there, and I don't know if they're building a second one of those or.
I don't see any other components out here right now. Yeah, it's weird having Sanchez all cleaned up right now. You can actually like find things pretty easily. Don't see anything else out there. Let's see here. I'm gonna grab another image. That's not really what I'm looking for. Maybe this one? Not really. Yeah, anyways, so I guess the only other things they have out here right now that we've kind of had our eyes on are an additional actuator, hydraulic actuator for the chopsticks. I believe this is the new one right here.
Yeah, it's got the added hoses at the front of it.
Right. Yeah, so I guess we should probably expect them to change out the other actuator on the left chopstick, depending on which direction you're looking at it. Probably after the next flight test. I'm surprised they didn't do it before, but you know, you can't really explain that. I think that's not really fully important for them to have it done until they start trying to catch the booster. So they just got one in, tested it to make sure it's what they want, and then probably replace the second one later.
And they may not need to, depending on how they operate the chopsticks during the landing burn.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think you want both of them to be able to operate the same. I do think the right chopstick will probably do most of the work as far as needing to actually position itself quickly. But I mean, obviously, since this one is here, they're definitely going to swap it out. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that actually works when they do that first catch. I'm sure we'll start to see them practice it. As soon as they get this swapped out, we'll see them start practicing that a little bit. I would like to see that on this flight, actually, if they actually simulate a catch as the booster's coming in to do its soft touchdown. If the chopsticks are doing that simulated catch at the same time, that'll be pretty interesting to see.
Agreed. And I've been thinking along those same lines that they'll do a virtual chopstick with the virtual landing in the ocean.
Right. Let's see. Is there anything else at the Sanchez site we should touch on? I haven't looked through these images a whole lot yet at the Sanchez site.
Just basically looks like they're getting the commodities ready for the bays and Star Factory from the looks of it right there.
Yeah, let me zoom in on that a little bit. So they're essentially, well, this is just laying concrete down here, but weren't they digging something to go underneath the road?
Yeah, in fact, where they're pouring that concrete was the start of it, and right there, and that goes all the way over to High Bay.
Let's say you had you've got two kind of parallel to each other. You can see in the bottom right of the image where they filled that in. It popped over to this one, and then it pops over behind High Bay, and they've evidently finished running whatever it is they're running.
Yeah, let's see if I can grab another image showing behind the High Bay. Where is it? This might show it. Yeah, right here.
That's why they're not using Remedios right now.
Just use a directional driller to come under there.
Yeah, they popped over to each one.
So do you guys think this is for like the fire suppression system?
There's speculation of that. Also some speculation of maybe they're trying to centralize their pressurization systems, which where it's going, I don't totally understand why they'd be doing that unless they're doing something ahead of time for the new Rocket Garden area. So
Yeah, that would make sense actually. I was thinking that they possibly move all of their argon storage over there as well too, because they have these vaporizers right here. So I don't know if we've seen labels on these tanks yet to know what they are.
I haven't seen any pictures from the ground
Nah.
shots.
Yeah,
They're
without
very
being able to
minor.
get over here, you're really limited on what you can actually see.
Yep.
Cool. Do we have questions on Sanchez? I imagine there probably isn't many.
No, not too many. I got a lot of questions that I'm saving for the launch site, but Kanan Copeland asks, I've heard that Ship 20 might be a display ship. Where might it end up? And would the public be able to go up to it like Booster 1019, I suppose, at Buffalo?
Yeah, I mean, they've kept it around this long. They obviously scrapped Booster 4, but they've kept Ship 20. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, Elon has said that they'll move the ship display stands closer to Highway 4. So it'll probably be somewhere down in this area. Sorry for the clouds in this image, but yeah, it'll probably either be where the tower sections are right now or against this wall. I have a feeling that they won't put it against the wall because they tend to. Here, this is a good one. At least at the Rocket Garden, I think there was a big area. I'm going to grab another image. Sorry. This one without the clouds. So this entire area right here was basically considered like a high risk zone or something like that. And essentially, anytime there's high wind, there's a risk of these tipping over. And so I think that because of that, they probably will put it in this area and not actually against the wall right here, because then they have to worry about the risk of it falling onto the highway potentially. So I would have to imagine that it's going to be over in this area.
Yeah, close, but not too close.
Exactly.
Agreed.
All right, back when we were talking about the launch table at Hangar M and such, SJ asks, what are the chances they construct the launch mount and the OLIT at the same time?
Well, I mean, last time around they were constructing the launch mount around the time that or I think it was shortly before they started the foundation for the tower. So with that said, I have to imagine that they've already started it.
Yeah, and last time they also had already put in the foundation for the legs for the OLM even before the tower really had gotten started under construction. So it seems they've started with the tower foundation this time around. And we'll get to that when we get to the launch.
Right.
Right. Yeah, more questions coming in about the launch site. Everybody wants to talk about the launch site, but I'm not going to ask those questions right now. Ship 25 asks, is there any activity around 32?
No.
Nope.
Didn't think so. All right, Ernest CF, how much time do you expect Tower 2 stacking process will take?
Honestly, it once the foundation is ready, the base is ready, we saw the tower at KSC go up in less than 2 months.
I can't remember how long KSC took. I know Jackson and I were looking at that one day. It's been a while back. But ultimately, the KSC tower didn't stack much faster than the Boca tower. The time schedules ended up being really close to each other. The difference was there was a lot more in the KSC tower section, so that on the back end there was going to be less finish work. Whereas the Boca first tower, the tower sections are basically empty when they stacked them, other than structure. So
Right.
I wish I
And
remember that timeline.
on that note, I do believe they ended up having to remove things from some of these tower sections because of the weight limit that they had,
Yep.
specifically on this top section. So on the first Starbase tower, this section was actually cut in half, and they lifted that in 2 pieces. I think this one, the lower section had one more column underneath it, one more floor level underneath it, and then it was the top section that went on after that. And even that got close to like maxing out that crane. And so with these, they have the stairs already installed in them, and then obviously, as Nate mentioned, they'll end up having all of the cryo tubing in here, and so that is going to essentially make these too heavy for the crane that they used last time. And so I kind of basically have these ready to show y'all. The tower, let's skip over these. This is the LR 11350 that they used for both the Florida Tower and OLIT 1. And this has a maximum capacity of, I think, 1,350 pounds. Tons. Sorry. Wow. Yeah. And that is just not going to be enough for this tower. And again, as I mentioned, they had to remove items from those sections in order to allow this crane in order to lift that. So we've gotten word about a larger crane, which is kind of hard to imagine, an even larger crane that they're going to be using for this job, which is the Saren's 8800. And I have a good shot of that right here. So this is the 8800 right here, and it's a little bit different. Instead of using a power boom configuration, this is actually called a
boom booster.
Say that again.
Boom booster.
Boom booster. Yeah. So it's they don't have the split booms on this. It's basically one piece, which is going to be interesting. These seem pretty large, so I wonder how that's going to look when they actually transport those. Do these split in half?
They actually come in containers. They totally take apart. It's like putting scaffolding together. Yeah, they totally. They may collapse to some extent, but they pretty much come apart. And then they build each of those sections and place them in place.
Okay. Yeah, so I imagine within maybe a month or two after Flight 4, we'll probably see this arrive. As soon as that foundation is complete, this will probably arrive on location because they're going to want to get that work done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, see, we've heard I guess more substantial rumors that this is going to be our crane. There's also rumors that it's going to be that big Mantiwalk. Man, that'd be a monster crane. It'd be a cool crane to have. And there were rumors that it was going to be a 13,000 LR. So.
Oh, the LR 13,000?
There was one rumor about that, but my theory about that is Buckner doesn't have a power boom set up for that, and it's
like
still
in the United States or at all.
Do what now?
You're saying they don't have it at all, or just in the United States they don't have it?
Well, Buckner doesn't have it at all, and I don't know if it's something they can easily get because it's such a specialized crane when it comes to the power boom. There's a good chance that if anybody has it, they're using it. And they won't. And the purpose of the power boom is lateral stability to height. So it's not a matter of helping it have the tonnage to lift the item. It's to help it not to sway when it's lifting those big old pieces way up in the air.
As it's
So,
swinging them.
yeah.
Right.
And down at Boca, you have a crazy wind load. I mean, even on calm days, there's wind.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and we saw how much of a headache it was for them to rig the top sections when they did finally lift it.
Right.
They spent forever trying to rig those chains at Starbase, trying to lift that top.
well, like you said, Zach, we'll know within about a month and a half what it ends up being.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I imagine they'll probably even have it arrive early.
I would imagine when they get that pedestal poured and you're getting on the backside of that pour, that crane will start showing up to be built.
Right. And I think they made a mistake the first time and started stacking the tower sections too early and didn't give the foundation or the base of the tower enough time to start curing, because there was a lot of cracks on the base of that tower. So I imagine they may wait a little bit longer than they did the first time around to start stacking.
Yeah.
Cool. Shall we move on to the ring yard area?
I want to thank some folks for some support first. I want to also say happy birthday to Todd Bernal, who just gifted sent a $10 super chat. Appreciate everything you give us, RGB. Everyone, don't forget to sub, like, share, and comment. Everything helps keeping these flights coming. Of course, gifting helps too. Rocket Prophet with a $10 super chat says, yes, what Todd said. Yazada with a $10 super chat. Keep RGB flying. And Detroit Mission Control with $4.99 super chat, no message. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on. Thank you all for your support. Definitely helps keep us flying.
Yeah, happy birthday, Todd. I didn't know it was his birthday. I was talking to him yesterday, and he didn't tell me that. So, I was searching for an image. There we go. That shows this parking garage a little bit better. But y'all can see the progress in this parking garage. And from our understanding, this was they're supposed to have. I think their deadline to get it constructed is the end of this month. So I think they have like 5 days left, 4 days left.
Yeah, till the 31st. So they have till Friday.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting close to finish. They only have one more column that they need to put here, and then all of the rest of the ramp sections. So, I mean, we can almost count them. I'm not going to do that right now, but they're getting very close to being finished on this. Obviously, there's probably all the utilities that they need to install on the inside, but I imagine as long as they have lighting installed, that they'll probably allow this to open up while they're still finishing all the rest of the work. This is a little bit smaller than I was expecting, honestly.
Yeah, I think it said that it's 900 spaces for vehicles, so it's still pretty large.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that they didn't put this near the Star Factory, because I imagine most of their workers are going to be like having to walk over to the Star Factory, because there's probably a lot more people inside that building than the rest of the site combined. So
Yeah, the
After
office
working,
building versus this parking garage kind of threw me off. I almost felt like the office building would be better over here and the
Yep.
parking garage over there.
Agreed.
yeah,
Let's see.
after working at a factory setting, I can tell you that having to walk a ways is very common.
I imagine they'll probably have a large bike rack over here so that people can grab bikes and get around the facility. They already have a pretty good amount of bikes for people to ride around the facility, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that out here as well.
Plus, they have on-site shuttles too, so I don't think it's going to be an issue.
So yeah, we are now in the front of the ring yard area. I keep calling it the ring yard, even though I highly doubt we'll ever see too many rings stored outside of here, other than directly in front of the mega bays. But yeah, they've gotten a lot of work. It looks like they've, as typical, removed some more concrete and repaved this area right here. Now that that's complete, I do wonder if we'll finally start to see them move
Yeah.
move uh, boosters and ships through here instead of all the way around the front. Like that makes so much more sense. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an
Storage.
easy pathway to get through here. Um, I imagine we'll probably start seeing them do that soon.
Start calling the ring yard the Traversal Alley.
Yeah, I mean, I love this setup. It sucks that we, especially now with I guess the new rules from the Department of Transportation as far as leaving cameras or leaving vehicles and cameras out here, may not be able to see what's going on out here as much. But I don't know. This is going to be a pretty active area when they really step up their production, which I think maybe probably about 2 months from now we'll probably see like a massive increase in production. But it's going to be pretty impressive. One of the cool things that obviously we started to see probably about 2-3 weeks ago was this final edition over here in the corner, which connects to the side of Mega Bay 1. We discussed this last night in the show and tell. If any of y'all were there for that, we were kind of trying to figure out whether or not it makes sense for them to move ring sections directly through into this building. And I think we kind of settled on the fact that it's possible, but probably not likely, just because of the fact that they are probably going to end up having additional workstations on this side of the building, and they may end up not doing that. So, do we know what is in this back corner? Is there anything in the back corner right now?
I believe that's the one turntable that's in there is in the back corner, and there's still
Okay, so
another turntable out. I believe I saw a turntable out in Sanchez still.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we may see both turntables in here,
I would say that's a very good possibility.
but they do appear to be about to construct another engine install stand, so maybe not.
Yeah. If that's what they construct, then it would just be the one turntable in the back corner.
Yeah, you know what I would like to see would be a third mega bay, and then all of the stacking for both boosters and ships happen in there, and then remove the stacking station from Mega Bay 2, the 2 stacking stations, and then have essentially 5 engine install stands in both buildings, and then do all their stacking in the other Mega Bay.
Yeah.
Or honestly, 2 additional Mega Bays would probably be ideal for the rate that I believe they're going to be capable of moving at with the Star Factory.
So 1 mega bay for stacking for each, so you'd have those 2, and then a mega bay each for finishing, or they could have nothing but the engine and finishing stands.
Right.
I like
And
it.
Thomas mentioned yesterday that this corner over here would be good for another mega bay. So you do your ship stacking over here, your final outfitting for ships over here, and then demolish the high bay and put another mega bay for stacking boosters, and then final outfitting for boosters in this building.
I think it's a matter of time before something like that happens. I really do.
Yeah, and if you think about the fact that they left all this space behind the high bay, I think that may be a sign of the fact that may end up happening, because you need that extra depth in order to
Work around it.
Yeah.
But the other thing you got to think of too is once they start catching boosters, we definitely are looking forward to rapid reusability. But at first, it's going to be a lot of refurbishment that most likely needs to take place. So you're going to have boosters and eventually ships that are going to need to go into one of these facilities to go through refurbishment, and that's just going to take up more space.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, plus with them wanting to build, 10 to 100 ships to every booster, it's going to be a crazy pace.
Yeah, I wonder how the logistics of that will work. How do you decide to use a refurbished booster versus a new one? Like you're continuing, they'll probably never stop manufacturing them, and then all of a sudden you have all these completed ones that have already flown, I do imagine that the storage of inside of the Sanchez site could end up getting rather large. I can't wait till we get to that point. That's going to be pretty crazy. Let's see. Do we have anything else in front of these two buildings that we wanted to mention? I do have a cool shot that I'll probably show here in a second as we move over to the Star Factory. Actually, there was one thing else that I wanted to check though. Cool. Yeah, I'll go ahead and start showing that. So this is a cool shot. This is from a helicopter looking into the high bay.
I know what helicopter that was. That's cool.
Yeah, this is a awesome view right here. This helicopter, some of you may be already able to guess, is the same one that they're using to lift the HVAC units onto the top of the building. I actually haven't seen this thing in a few weeks. Has it still been active over the last week?
No, it pretty much got that stuff done, I think, in about 2 days. I mean, it was amazing how quickly they would place one and it would go latch up to another one. And it was back and forth.
But they still have more to do, though.
They have a few more, but it hasn't been back.
Wow, they've gotten a lot of them done, though.
Oh, yeah. They did all that in that like 2-day window, other than the ones.
Really?
Yeah. It was nuts.
So they still have these
Yeah,
ones right here. Are there additional HVAC units on the side over here? I'm going to get a beep view from that side.
I don't believe there were, and that may be why they had to wait.
Yeah, plus they've been installing all the bridge cranes in Star Factory, so I think that's one of the reasons they've been waiting.
Oh, is that what these holes are for?
Yeah, look, you can see a crane sticking through the one.
Is it holding a bridge crane right now?
It looks like it is. That's exactly what they're doing. Which would make sense. You've got an HVAC right next to it.
Right. Yeah. So these holes will probably just get covered up because this doesn't have an actual frame like these for those HVAC units to sit on top of. So I would love to know exactly how many bridge cranes are in there. It's probably a lot. And also,
you can pretty much count.
Go ahead.
I was going to say you can pretty much count by the holes in the roof there, but I'm sure that's probably double what we see there.
Yeah, I imagine there's probably 3 per row, potentially, at least 2, if not 3. So for each of these holes, probably 3 bridge cranes. But yeah, this is pretty amazing. I mean, I would say 6 months ago, none of us would have expected this to be as large as it is. On the opposite side over here, this week, they've, let's see if I can, so many pictures. By the way, for those of you who are patrons or YouTube members, this week there's about 300 images. So if y'all want to go through the images yourself, there's a massive amount of them to go through. But yeah, so these over here on this side, they finally opened this back up. They did have some bracing going in between this opening right here, and now they've opened it back up. So interesting to see what they've got going on here. They've started a few foundations down here. Some of them line up with the columns for the actual taller part of the Star Factory, but these ones look a little bit different. I'm not really sure what's going on here. You guys have any ideas?
I think they're following the angle of the road like the rest of the building.
Say that again.
That end is curved slightly to follow the angle of the right-of-way, and I think that's why those are angled as well.
So you think those will be columns for the building?
Yeah, for the rest of Star Factory and maybe part of the office building as well. Yeah,
it's really weird because I mean, this looks like the way that the office building is constructed. It looks like this is the end of it, but this foundation right here is similar to the foundations that they used for the actual office building. So it's going to be really weird to see what they end up doing with this. And I mean, it essentially looks like they're going to expand it out around this area that they're not able to use. And I really would like to know why they didn't just do that from the start.
Yeah, it
I think
definitely at times feels like this building, between Star Factory and this office building, it's almost like it's a moving target.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, I would love to know, for each square foot that they add, like what that translates to in production capability, like how much larger does this building really need to get? This is insane.
Yeah, and now that the EIS was completed at Roberts Road for that 100 acres, it's going to be crazy to see what that factory ends up looking like.
True. And I think one other thing that would be interesting for somebody to probably do would probably require a satellite image to compare the total square footage of factory space for Starbase versus Blue Origin's facility. It's a little harder to determine because they're spread out between multiple different buildings. But I wonder what the comparison for that looks like. And I guess it's a little bit different for Blue Origin as well because they construct their rockets horizontally instead of stacking them vertically. So it would be really difficult to see what that translates to as far as like overall production capacity goes. But moving on, they've also gotten started over the last few weeks on the third section of this tower or the office building. This is going to be pretty cool. I mean, as much as I would love to see like a tour of the inside of this when it's done, I'd almost also hope that EDA doesn't waste his time in there and spends most of that time inside of the Star Factory, so we can get a good idea of like operations inside of that building. Yeah, that's going to be. I mean, really, his entire next video could be just inside the Star Factory and nothing else. Maybe inside the Mega Base as well too. But yeah, this is really cool. Also curious which operations are going to be in here. If it's all just production office space, or if potentially mission control could be in here. And I think in the past we thought that wasn't really going to be a possibility. However, they did have some of their. They had one guy during the last during IFT3 who was inside of the Mega Bay for the broadcast. So I wonder if he was like this sacrificial lamb to determine whether or not it's safe to have people that close. But when they become confident that their vehicles are always going to launch without having engine issues and not worried about something falling back to the pad, I think that alone is enough to say that okay, it's okay to have mission control here. Like, even if you're maybe worried about a booster crashing when it's landing, nowhere near as dangerous as something falling back to the pad when after liftoff. So
Yeah.
I would like to hope that eventually their mission control will be in this building.
Yeah, and we're pretty sure at least one of the launch videos, they were in the Stargate building as well. So I think they're getting more and more confident with the launch.
Yeah, that'll be pretty awesome. Maybe even seeing views out the window when they were showing that mission control room. Let's see. There's a few other things just to touch on over here. They're busy setting up utilities for that building as well too. Let's see if I can find the correct angle for that. Maybe I'll just get a zoomed out view. So right now down here they have a directional driller. Right, is this it right here?
I think it is.
Yeah, so they have a directional drilling unit, and down here you can see a bunch of tubing laid out right here. So not sure exactly what they're doing. I don't know if that's just like water supply or something like that, because all of their electrical is already down there. You can see the boxes and all of the conduit going underneath the ground right there. So it's tough to say what this is. And they also have a new building down here that they're constructing. So I'm not sure if this is just for utilities or whatever, but just an interesting thing to point out as far as auxiliary work that's going on down here.
Yeah, looks like a sub pump station to add on to the one already at Sanchez.
Yeah, it's weird because their main substation is like right here for just power distribution to the Star Factory. So I've been wondering if they'll actually move that into this building, but I think they would have already had to start the groundwork for that conduit if they were going to do that, and it's probably pretty tough to actually transfer that, even though it's very close by. Probably very difficult to move that into this building, so it's likely for something completely different. Although right here, it does look like something went underground here, right?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of conduit work over in that area recently. So next to those transformers at that substation, that was all dug up, and we did see the conduits.
Right. Let's see. I think maybe we can move on from this area, unless we have some questions that we need to address.
Indeed, but I want to thank Ribby for gifting 5 memberships, as well as Miss Jax for gifting a membership as well. Thanks for that support, keeping RGV in the air. I got about 6 or 8 questions, all related to the same thing, so I'm going to combine them. Regarding the production ramp up with Star Factory and tens of ships and boosters, where are they going to be stored? And, especially when and if the inevitable, higher category hurricane comes through, what are they going to do with these? Where are they going to store them? And how do you think that's going to pan out?
So I think that was kind of something I alluded to a little bit earlier, as far as keeping that storage a little bit further from the highway so that you don't have to worry about things tipping over onto the road. I think that this will be the most ideal spot right here because, specifically like this middle row right here, because I guess you do have to worry about if things tip over this way, it hitting their utilities over here. But I think in the middle right here is probably the safest spot because you can tip over in either direction without hitting anything critical. But this zone right here, unless they construct something else, like maybe a larger, what's this building called? The
Inventory tent, I believe.
Inventory tent. Yeah, I would not be surprised to see a larger inventory tent since they are currently storing some things outside. So that could be something that we end up seeing this being used for. But really, all that extra storage for boosters and ships will probably be out here.
Awesome.
Once those tower sections leave, then they'll have a lot of work.
Yeah. Would also be interesting to construct additional mega bays specifically for the purpose of retrofitting or post-flight work, so that the bays inside of the actual production site are purely for production. It would be interesting to see them construct large buildings for maintenance work over here, and then just have the storage for vehicles in front.
Yeah, that'd make a lot of sense because you can shuffle them in and out of their kind of their I guess you'd say static based storage into the base to get work done.
On it right now, they're gonna have to do that. So Astro Joe, were all of those questions regarding that same topic?
Yeah, pretty much. That pretty well addresses everything, but I want to thank Crane Man for a PayPal donation of $25, who says, "Great show, awesome pictures, hopping on the donation train, choo-choo," from Crane Man. Thank you so much, Crane Man.
Awesome. Cool. Well, in that case, I guess we'll keep moving on. And this was one image I forgot to show earlier. This is the actual helicopter like looking down on one of those HVAC units as it's preparing to lift it up. So that's a pretty cool shot.
There's our
Also have
building. I just can't really see
yeah, a brief
much
glimpse into
detail.
there. This guy's using like an iPhone 3, I think. So not getting enough detail there. Yeah, I guess we'll move on to the village area. I don't even know if there's anything worth mentioning over here this week. Let's see. I want to get. So they are working on preparing just utilities or whatever for the rec center that's eventually going to go over here. So we don't know exactly where it's going to be yet. I don't think. I think it's potentially supposed to be in this corner right here, right? Yeah, so we know they have plans for a large rec center. They just haven't actually started on it yet, but they've at least got their electrical conduit and utilities ready down here. So we'll probably see them start that soon, I would have to imagine. Beyond that, over in this area, they did add another structure onto the integration building adjacent to it. No idea what that's for, but yeah, that's there.
Missed that. Interesting.
Is this a new ship lift mount, or this is just one of the old ones?
That's one of the ones. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, is this the first one that they stopped using?
I believe it is.
I figure they're
No, I
probably
think
needed.
that's the second generation one too. You can see if you zoom in on the actual pins, you can see the little cradle things under it. Like if you look under that ladder, you can see one of the cradle things that go below the pin to help it rest against the ship.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is a second version because the first version had that weird shape that tried to come around the fin.
Right. So this may actually be a new one then.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, what else do we have? Actually, you know what? The interesting thing about this is, I wonder how many they actually need, because I guess you probably only need like 3 total, one in the high bay and then 2 in the mega bay, because they won't be lifting ships any other way anywhere else other than using the chopsticks at the launch site, and they won't need cranes at the at Massey's. So I think once they have 3, that'll probably be the last we see of those.
Yeah. That makes you wonder what'll happen to Marvin in the next year.
Yeah, I've thought about that. So I imagine they'll have it help out with some of the auxiliary stuff at the launch site, because they have a whole tank farm that they have to construct. And it'll probably also help out with lifting the chopsticks onto the tower. And then after that, I can't really think of too much purposes for it, other than if they construct a few more mega bays, then they'll probably use that for that construction, I would have to imagine. So
Yeah.
after that, I would say its days are probably numbered.
Yeah. Well, if they eventually integrate a hot stage ring somehow into a booster forward, then that'll be one less thing it'd be used for too, is to cherry pick a hot stage off. So yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure Buckner would love to have it. They love that model crane. So
Yeah, they just take off the
It
SpaceX
would.
logo and give it back to them.
yep.
It also wouldn't
um,
be surprising if they sent the LR11,000 back to KSC as well for all that new construction that's going to happen.
That could be a really big
Good point.
possibility.
Don't they already have one down there?
And that was the one that came and built Mega Bay 2, and then it went into Buckner's fleet.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, so they'll probably send it back. Cool. Well, I guess it's probably a good time to move over to the launch site. I can't imagine that we have questions for this area.
Moving right along.
All right. Well, I guess this is the part of the show that most of y'all were waiting for. we are now at the launch site, and as y'all can tell, um, the suborbital tank farm has pretty much been deleted. So we
They erased it fast.
really quick, yeah. We got lucky that these flyover images were pretty much taken right before the last major component of that farm was preparing to be lifted away. So this was like shortly before they actually lifted this, and I think it's already left, or is at least preparing to leave.
It left
Uh,
you. It was at least preparing to leave yesterday afternoon. It was almost at the gate. So
yeah, and I think we kind of some people thought that maybe this would move over to Massey's. I just don't think this tank is large enough for Massey's. If you look at, I'll just grab a long distance aerial view. This tank is about the size of or it is the size of the smaller methane tanks, and I just don't think that they would want to use that at Massey's. And the size of the foundations over here um, is made for these larger tanks, so I don't think we'll see that here. You can basically tell the difference between those two types of tanks here, and I think the stance of the bases are a little bit different, so it doesn't quite line up. And I think as long as they have access to these larger tanks, they would prefer those over the small ones because obviously more capacity. So I don't think we'll see those move here. More than likely, I think this tank will end up going down to KSC. So they're currently expanding tank farm storage for Falcon Heavy operations. And we've already seen some components of this suborbital tank farm end up down there. Like at least one of the vertical nitrogen storage tanks has been moved down there. So I imagine this is probably going to go along with that. But yeah, this tank is more ideal for Falcon operations than Starship. It's not really Starship sized. So
yeah,
yeah,
especially with all the.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, especially with all the increased Falcon Heavy launches that are coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, this is man, it's crazy to see this. This has been the suborbital tank farm's been here longer than well, pretty much everything except for the Stargate building.
yeah,
Yeah. So this is like one of the last remaining like areas from the original Starbase, and it's kind of crazy like to be able to see the way that it's transformed over the years. And yeah, it's pretty much be unrecognizable on this side, or it already is unrecognizable from what it was. And in a span of like 3 years, this became obsolete. So really amazing to be able to see the way that they continue to transform Starbase. And I think this next phase is going to be probably the most exciting phase, in my opinion. And after this, we have basically to look forward to them constructing at least 4 more launch sites in Florida, from what I've been told. So there should be, I think, 5 total, possibly 6, within KSC and potentially on the Cape Canaveral side as well too. But yeah, this is going to be pretty intense. But I think this will be the first of what we should expect the future to look like, because this is ideally going to be the design that they stick with for all the other launch sites. But in the meantime, they're removing the berm over here. They've obviously started clearing all this area over here, the actual all the remaining concrete and underground pipe work and whatnot. I have a feeling that we'll see them obviously remove the pad A area and put it back down to grade. And then I think this comms building will probably go away as well too, I would have to imagine.
yeah. I think they'll erase it all.
Yeah, I mean, it is nice to already have a comms building and not have to construct a new one, but I think this is probably in the way of probably a tank farm, if I had to guess. And same thing with pretty much all of this. I think that Starhopper is going to end up moving. I think it's in the way. So I think pretty much all of this little storage shed over here will probably move. Starhopper, and as funny as it is, I also believe we'll see this wall get completely dismantled.
The we needed something to do wall is what I'm calling it.
Yeah, it's really, really weird the way that how fast things change down here. It's like, oh, this is the future of the launch site, and now it's like, okay, we're going to need to place all of these signs in storage, and then we'll build another wall later.
Yeah, I think that wall was built to help with the groundwork, but they wanted to make it look nice and not just an eyesore.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's probably a pretty large change of plans from what they were originally thinking. Um, but yeah, so I guess moving on to the actual tower foundation, which I guess now we can confidently say that that's what this is. We counted these out the other day, and there are 133 CFA piles on this foundation, and that is significantly different than what they did for the first tower. So I was talking to somebody else yesterday, and I believe these are 24-inch piles, and they're spaced 8 feet apart. And if we look at have a good shot of the original foundation. Okay, I'll get rid of that. We don't need that anymore. So this is the original foundation for the first tower, and this is 25 piles. So there's at this point 108 more piles for the new tower than there were for this one, and it's very interesting. I think that it's interesting that they went with the smaller ones, but they're able to cover more area instead of having such large spacing between them. So significantly more support, I would say, even though overall the larger ones are a little bit more ideal, I would say. But yeah, it's interesting just how many of them they have there. And I think if you took the total surface area of piles, it would probably be, I don't know, 2 to 3 times more than what is on the first tower. So really want to make sure that that thing does not move at all.
Yeah. You got to remember the number of piles they have, the amount of friction they have is I would assume is much higher. A lot of times you think of piles for buildings and you think of just weight, like it's being balanced, but so much of it's actually friction too. So
Right. And I was actually
Plus, they didn't do any of this.
any of the what?
Plus, they didn't do any of this groundwork. They didn't do
Can
any
you say
of
that one more time? You cut out a little
this ground prep.
bit. You mean like the dewatering?
Sorry. I was just saying that they didn't do any. Yeah.
like you saying, they didn't do dewatering on the first tower like they have over here. They didn't put the wicks in because, of course, this whole area has those wicks they put in a few months back. The dewatering wicks.
Sorry, Lawrence. I think there's a bit of a delay between you and I, so apologize for stepping on you there. But I was actually incorrect with the total number of piles. There's actually 135 if you count these two. I think there may be additional ones in this area that we're not seeing that haven't been uncovered yet. But there's 2 down in this corner right here. Let me grab another view. There's 2 right here. And I would not be surprised if there's more down in this area that they haven't uncovered yet. And if we look at the tower from Florida, and you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have closed out of that because I think I needed one of those images. Oh, there we go. So you can see that in Florida, they actually have an additional concrete structure on the outside of the main foundation or the main base of the tower. And this is for the 2 parts of the drawworks to be on these 2 platforms right here. So I think that we're basically seeing the same thing right here. is the outer edges of that structure. I feel like there's probably additional piles potentially over here as well too that they may not have uncovered yet.
It almost looks like there's piles along that PVC.
Yeah,
Like
like
some of
right
that could be
here, maybe.
dewatering. Yeah. That may no, those are dewater. You can see I can see the yellow hoses going in. A lot of that's dewatering stuff. They drilled some, and I don't know a lot about dewatering, but as they were doing this, they drilled some dewatering shafts, for no better word, to actually pull water out beyond the wicks as they were building this or
Right.
digging this.
But
Yeah,
it
and
also
so
looks
now
like there's
you cut out again there.
those gray areas.
Gray
Those
areas.
gray areas look like in the dirt.
Where?
Right to the left of your cursor. Or down. Sorry. Yeah, in the dirt there, all along that edge. That edge below your cursor, it looks like there's concrete that was poured.
Oh, sorry, you're cutting out a lot there. I think you got some signal interruption going on.
Sorry about that.
Sorry about that. You're good. Yeah, so I guess our next step that we're really waiting on is to see where the base of the tower is going to be, or sorry, the launch mount. And let me.
The Alpha East, Zach.
I'm going to switch to this overhead view. So there's 4 options on where the actual launch mount's going to be. So because this is we know the launch mount's going to be in a corner of the tower. So it can either be here, right here, here, or over here. And I'm not going to bother with calling out directions because it's really hard for me to remember what's north and south and all that stuff. So I think the 2 most likely that people have been thinking are this corner right here and this corner right here. Based on where a lot of this stuff is currently laid out, I would pretty much assume that it's going to be in this area, which in my opinion makes the most sense. So assuming that I guess let's take a step back. There's a possibility that they could have shared tank farm storage. And it's not that unreasonable to just have underground culverts going over to a launch mount that's right over in this area. They would still need additional pumps. So they have obviously your methane and liquid oxygen pumps. It is possible that they could still use these pumps to send your propellants all the way over here. If y'all remember, and I'm just gonna swap through images over here. So on the back side of this berm, there are additional cryo tubes which are currently not being used, which went under the berm right here, and were basically they came underneath right here, and were used for the cryo testing station that was originally right in this location. So theoretically, it's possible that using just the pumps that are in this area, they could dig up the pipework that's down here and then send that all the way over to the new tower. So it basically go underground across here and over to this launch mount. I personally think that they'll duplicate the tank farm and put another one, because eventually you're going to want to get to being able to perform back-to-back launches, and who knows, maybe even in the same day. I think that's pretty far out, but obviously that is their goal to be able to do that. So I think one tank farm is not enough. Like this, as far as we know, potentially can do 2 full launches with just this setup right here. However, that's assuming you don't have to detank at all. So the moment you have to detank one time, then all of a sudden this is not enough for 2 launches. So I feel like they're probably going to want to put another tank farm over in this area. So with that said, it doesn't really make sense to put your launch mount right here because that then it's very close to where your tank farm is over here. And obviously you can put a berm in between them. But I even with that berm, we still see damage with these walls and the berm right here. We still see damage sometimes to things in the front of the tank farm, like specifically the conduit racks that they have going on the front of here. We've seen those blown apart. We've seen damage to the shielding on the outside of these tanks over here. What was that?
It's the skins. Yeah, they have peeled those skins back so many times now.
Pretty much every launch that happens.
Yep.
So, even though this wall is here, the plume is not getting thrown up into the air. It's like curling over the wall and going through this tank farm. So I would have to imagine that they would want to at least have a portion of that tank farm be protected by the base of the tower. So, putting it in this corner right here makes a lot more sense, for that specific purpose. And right now we see that they have additional rebar for future rebar cages, basically being set up in this area. And the CFA drilling rig is pretty much over here. We don't know if it's actually started drilling anything, but it's at least currently set up in this area right where, a launch mount would be. So I think it's pretty much guaranteed that we'll see it in this corner. Y'all have any more thoughts on that?
I think that would make the most sense.
Yeah. Did they already drill a piling right here? Or is it just...
That's just the tip. I want to say the bit's actually somewhere else. I can't remember. I thought I saw the bit laying away from it, but maybe not.
There's one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, as I said, they have the rack for assembling rebar cages right here.
They're the same 2-foot cages they've been assembling. You can see them. At first, I thought they were about to assemble the big cages, but that's not the case. They don't have that drilled there yet, or at least the head.
Yeah, I mean, at minimum, they'll need the big one for the underneath each of the 6 legs. We don't know if they'll do smaller ones for all the auxiliary locations like they did with this, but I imagine we'll see the large. I think they were like 4 feet or something like that, possibly even 6, for the actual underneath the legs. But I imagine we'll probably see piles all throughout this area. Like there'll be pilings in this entire corner stretching around here.
You think they'll tie it all together in one slab? So you go
Yeah.
ahead and get your piles that are going to be around your launch mount, and then you go ahead then and tie that slab into the base of the tower. That way, if they have any problems with subsidence, they'd go together this time instead of separate.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. And with that said, they'll definitely start on the tower foundation here soon. They already have the rebar over here for that.
The chairs.
Say that again.
So they got the chairs. I didn't even realize they had that rebar laying over there. I missed that.
Yeah, so that's basically going to be used for forming out that base. But once they have that foundation completed, I imagine we'll immediately start seeing them do all the auxiliary drilling over here. And there's going to be a ton of piles. I think that'll take probably at least a full month, if not 2, to finish all those pilings because, there's 130 of them here. I wouldn't be surprised to see an additional 200 to 300, if not more, throughout this area.
Exciting times.
Yeah, I'm really exciting. I think it'll be interesting to see whether or not they start this foundation before the launch. Because I mean, as far as we know, we're um, roughly about 10 days out from that launch. I think the fact that they've already started excavating this says that they are not waiting. They'll just probably get started and do as much as they can before the launch. But after Flight 4, this is going to get pretty crazy over here.
Yeah, this is all really cool to me because I started watching and paying attention to all this because YouTube recommended the SN8 live stream to me. And of course, the launch site on the orbital side was in a not exactly the same, but a similar stage of construction at that point. And so this is kind of cool.
Yeah, this
Agreed.
is it's like returning to 2021.
Yeah.
And I think one thing we haven't mentioned, this area down here, potentially, and as far as why this wall has to go away, imagine that whatever deluge system they have will be down in this area more than likely. The actual tank farm could stretch down into here as well too. I think this may end up being a little bit more compact than the first tower, as far as a lot of people are scared to have a tank farm so close to the tower, but I think this will actually be just a much more compact setup, and the tank farm will be a little bit closer to the tower than it is for the first tower.
Yeah, so
Let's see, moving. Go ahead.
since they're getting to build from scratch instead of having to refurb everything, I think we're going to see a much tighter layout than the original tower.
Agreed. What I would like to see, I'm going to go to a different image. I would like to see an underground tank farm. So I know it sounds crazy, but if you had walls around all of this, you could theoretically put a roof over it. And even on that note, well, no, I don't think it's possible here because these tanks specifically are too close together to put columns down there to support a roof. However, I would not be surprised to see a roofed tank farm. So, like, if you could basically do the same thing that you're doing with the flame trench at Massey's, like if you dug down, I think it would have to be like 20, possibly 30 feet, and then basically put a massive concrete tub down here. It'd be a lot of ground prep that's required to make sure that water's not coming up from the bottom and through the sides. But it would be very interesting to see a underground tank farm, and that way it would be far more protected. You can like put a roof over it. I think that would be very unique because we haven't really seen that anywhere else. But there aren't too many launch sites where the GSE is this close to the actual tower either. So I think for actually protecting it, that would be the most ideal way to go if it's like possible from a civil engineering perspective. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, "That's crazy," but you never know.
What if they changed where they come in and out of the launch site with the rockets and just kind of doubled up the current farm toward this tower, where it was a decent ways away, and they just kind of continued building it out
From
from
here,
left to right. Yeah.
and just move the entrance down
Yeah.
to
They
like
just moved
here.
the entrance down this way somewhere and just skirted out back side of it with anything going to pad 1 or pad A.
Yeah, I would say that's not unreasonable. Um, yeah, I mean, it still leaves you. I guess you would probably put your entrance down here and then just have to come through this area to reach the first tower.
Just thinking of alternatives.
Yeah, and with the way they left the ends of the pipes for the horizontal tanks flanged, they could easily add on to that system.
Right. I see people asking questions about a possible underground tank farm. I see James Sanford asking, is an underground tank farm a really bad idea? If you get a leak, isn't it going to dissipate quickly and could go stoichiometric easily? Yeah. So obviously you run risks of leaks. I mean, we don't know what the like how often they have leaks over here. I would have to imagine it's probably not very often, and they probably, once they're detected, because they have sensors all through here, especially on the methane side, to detect methane leaks. And I'm pretty sure they don't just like let those continue. They probably, make repairs wherever necessary. But I think that all you would need to do is either have a very large vent system that's like constantly pulling out air, so like basically a negative pressure zone inside of that covered structure, and also with how much nitrogen you have, you could create a space that's basically constantly being purged out with nitrogen, or if methane leaks are detected, then you initiate that system. So I don't think it's impossible. It's just difficult, and I think for a lot of people, hard to imagine. But again, I like to consider all options, and if it was up to me, that's what I would do. Let's see. Before I move on, I want to see if I know we got to have questions related to this.
I got a lot of questions and a little bit of support too. I'd like to thank Dean Burlhart for a $5 super chat, who asks, could the extra height of Pad A be used to elevate orbital launch orbital launch tower 2, stacking crane for extra lift height? Great show, by the way. Glad to have Zach back.
An elevated platform for lifting tower sections? Is that what they're
Essentially,
basically asking?
Pad A being higher. There's another question related to the ramp. Will the Pad A ramp still be intact for the second tower?
Nah, I think that's their next step, is to eliminate this above grade area. They've already started with the berm. I imagine they're going to remove all of this ramp right here. It's really not that large. And as far as the crane goes, like, you probably want your crane much closer to the tower than right here. If anything,
I would almost say that great parking lot is a great place to stage stuff, and the gravel lot right there by the sign. I don't know if they'll do that, but
I would say this right here is probably the best place for that crane to go. So once this ramp is removed, this area right here allows you to lay down all of the crane along this area, because you need a very long flat area to assemble that crane, and then you can bring in your tower sections right here and then lift in this direction. You could also bring in the tower sections over here to lift. However, I imagine they'll want to stay as far away from this area as possible, so they're not having to like interrupt launch mount construction. So I think the crane being right here is the most ideal for allowing access for trucks and equipment to be moving back and forth through this area.
All right. I want to thank Dave Avery for gifting 5 memberships. Thanks for that support. We got another question and a super chat from Jeff S. Jones, $10 super chat. OLM south or east of the orbital launch tower, which was just a question and poll, but favor south for flames not aimed at chopstick cables or propellant quick disconnect during takeoff. What's your opinion?
I don't know if y'all have different thoughts on where I was thinking.
no, I've thought of east just because, which would be left in this picture to match the tower orientation, like rotation is similar, but there's a lot of merit with it being to the top of this picture and south, like you've been talking about.
Yeah, that would be south where the CFA is right now.
I did see another question in the chat that wasn't that probably didn't put the question in front of it, but I do want to address it because I like the question. Somebody said, I think it was Starbase Sim asked, no flame trench. If this was a year ago, I would say the chances of a flame trench are slim to none. But this time around, I would say that we shouldn't discount that option until it becomes clear that that's not happening. I do think it's possible. Okay, so I don't know where the area that they need for the land swap is, but actually, let's cancel that idea because we were talking about this last night, and in order to push that land swap through, I think they said it was going to take like up to like a year or more.
I think 18 months is what I heard thrown out there.
Yeah, so that's probably not going to be an option. But I feel like a flame trench is not impossible. So you could have it going multiple directions. So instead of just one trench in one direction, you could have it split going into multiple directions. So I do think it's theoretically possible. The space is not the greatest because it would probably have to come down in this direction. And if that's the case, you still have the ability to build a drive over that trench, and that would be similar to the one that's at Massey's, just larger. So I guess I'll just show that really quick. This isn't the best angle for it, but this pad right here, if it was larger, because obviously the trench is going to be, if it was a trench, it's going to be much larger. You could just build a drive over so that you can roll SPMTs to get around it. So if you needed to, if the trench was right here, for example, then you could just have the drive over that allows you to still get your boosters and ships over to the side of the launch tower. And on that note, the drive up the lifting position doesn't have to stay on this side of the tower. So if the launch mount's here, they could lift from this position instead of this position. And so you wouldn't necessarily be as worried about a trench there. The main issue, I guess, would be the placement of the tank farm, especially if it's an above ground tank farm. That makes it significantly less likely that you would have a trench. But again, I don't think it's impossible. And on that note, the current flame deflector system seems to be working right now, but I think a problem with it is that there is some erosion. Like, we don't know how much erosion, but it's not like invincible. You know what I mean? Like, at some point, after a certain amount of launches, it will become unusable and you'd have to replace it. And the problem with that is it's extremely difficult to replace this because of just in general how it's designed. Like, you'd have to break out all the concrete around here in order to get to it, and then cut all the welds that are securing it to the ground, and then you'd have to remove the plate and place another one. Versus if you did have a flame trench, like the deflector, the deluge system for that is a lot more replaceable than that deluge plate, in my opinion. It's much easier to swap that out than it is to swap out that flame deflector system. So yeah, I think that at minimum, if they do go this route, it'll still be different because they need to find some way to protect the top of this structure. Because right now the top of the structure gets pretty roasted, and they regularly have to replace some of the burn panels on the top of the launch mount. So something's going to have to change, whether it's an upgraded version of this or they go with a completely different design. Like something, it's definitely not going to be the same. I'm willing to bet on that it will not be the same as the first one. I got a little lost in the sauce there, but there's more questions on this area.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. Want to thank Drew Nar for a $10 Canadian super chat, which we already addressed that question. Do you think they'll remove the ramp to pad A? So yeah. Also want to thank Super Galactic 4200 for a $4.99 super chat, which we also addressed that question on whether or not it would be a good idea to bury the new tank farm tanks, but loves the content and thanks for all you guys do. Let's see. Got some questions related to tank farmage. Mando Dave asking, what's the likelihood we see sphere-shaped commodity storages for Pad B area?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
What is the likelihood we see sphere-shaped commodity storages for Pad B area? That's a tongue twister.
I think that would be the most ideal. I think, well, yeah, I feel like they would have done that down here if they weren't trying to eliminate this as quickly as possible, because it's going to take a long time to assemble that. I think for maximizing the space here, that would by far be the most ideal. What do you guys think?
I've kind of been wondering if they're going to do another large LOX tank like they built at KSC and then use that in combination with some horizontals.
I think your horizontals in that situation would be nitrogen. Like if you had a spherical methane tank next to that flat bottom LOX tank, and then you just need a few horizontal, basically 4 horizontal nitrogen tanks. You could fit that into a way smaller area.
Yeah, the LOX tank at the Cape baffles me a little bit to this day, so I'm not sure. I get it has a lot of storage, but it also was such a, when I say low bar, I don't mean like cheap tank. I mean the pressure you could actually store the LOX under was so low, which means you have to keep it so much more chilled, which means more nitrogen. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird that they did that, because they already didn't like the vertical tank farm here. So it was interesting. Like I feel like by the time they had started constructing that, they already realized that they made a mistake with the vertical tank farm storage here. But what we don't know, I guess, is the type of steel, I guess, used for that structure. Like they used, as far as we know, 4mm steel for the vertical tanks here. And they could use higher gauge steel. They could have used higher gauge steel for that tank at KSC, and that may allow for like higher pressure in that tank.
Yeah.
But we don't really know how they constructed it, so it's tough to say. But I personally would like to see that. Like, I think people will be confused if they start doing that. Like, why are you doing this again? You said you didn't like homemade tanks, but I think the difference is in that situation, they would be hiring a contractor to build those tanks instead of constructing them themselves. So it could be better off if they had a contractor who specializes in that construct those tanks instead of doing it themselves. Then it'd probably be higher performance, higher quality than what they did originally.
Yeah.
Spherical Cow asks, where do you think the catch basins for deluge and engine chill will go for Tower 2?
Um, no idea. I mean, if the tank farm, if the tank farm is down in this area, then I imagine it would just be next to the tower in this area right here, unless this is the drive up. It could also go in this area. Like if the drive up for the tower is over here, then you could put that catch basin over here. Yeah, it's tough to say. By that point, because it's going to take a year to finish all of this, they could have permission by that time to expand out a little bit more, and then they could put that stuff away from this area, possibly. It'd be risky to rely on that, though, because it's not guaranteed that you're going to get permission to do that. So I think they're going to have to, as of right now, work with what they have.
For sure. And a lot more questions have been asked related to the orientation of the tower, such as Detroit Mission Control and Sharpie recently. Do we think the booster quick disconnect will be on the eastern end to avoid the tip over flames?
No.
No, they won't move it. Then they just got to harden that QD more.
Yeah, you don't want to turn that, because then you don't. I mean, that would be like putting the QD on the back side of the booster and then leaving the ship QD on the front side. That would be really weird.
Right.
I mean, I think it's safe to say that this launch mount will match booster version 2. And so there could be QD changes, but I still think you're going to see a main QD on the tower side of everything.
Sure. That's about all the questions I've got for here. We did have a couple of members asking throughout the show if we were going to be covering Rio West today.
Covering what?
Rio West, the shopping mall and restaurant area.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I have some images of that. And then we'll get to the stuff that I said we were going to talk about at the beginning. So this is the shopping mall area. Not really a ton to mention here. They're preparing to start the civil engineering work, all the ground stuff, but they have not. And then we also have the storage area back here, which nothing really special going on back here other than lots of cribbing for cranes, some actual crane parts, and random stuff, but not a lot going on back here. Oops. Any more questions before we oh man, we still got a lot to go. This is not going to be a 2-hour show because we're already over that, so we're going to have to... I do want to talk about the tank farm before we talk about the whole hot stage ring thing.
For sure, man. Yep. Go ahead, take it on.
Cool. I think this is my tank farm area. So, yeah, I guess all we really have to address over here is that they've removed more of the 2 nitrogen tanks. So I think last night they removed this shell, the remaining piece of the shell over here. So they've been in the middle demolishing all of the walls, the pedestals for the interior tanks, and then they removed the shell. So I think they're probably going to start next on removing this foundation. And then as of right now, it seems like these tanks are safe until after the next launch. They are no longer using these tanks, but as far as we can tell, they're no longer using these tanks. However, I don't know if they've finished removing all the perlite from the inside. I think they've done it on at least one of them, according to Vix, but we don't know if they've done these 2 yet. So these are basically going to be the last remaining items from the original tank farm. And once that's gone, I have a feeling that we'll see them add additional equipment in here. So like they have the new, where are they? Got to get a better view. Maybe this will show them. Nope. The new vaporizers that are for, I believe, the liquid oxygen storage tanks. But they don't have them for the methane side. And right now they're still using the original system, which uses water. I'm not going to get too deep into that right now because I have a very long explanation about that coming. But they do have all these additional vaporizers at the Sanchez site. I'll go over there really quick. Where are they? There's 4 of them right here. So and another, I think this is probably going to be like a vertical nitrogen storage tank. So at minimum, I think all of this stuff is going to go over to the launch site. So we'll end up seeing what else they end up doing after all of these tanks are gone. It's going to be weird just having this like large open space. But I imagine that something extra will happen inside of this area once they have all this removed. May not happen until after the next tower is built, though, because once they're finished with that one, they'll start redoing stuff in this area, and I have a feeling that they'll start renovating the tank farm yet again after that. With that, I don't know if there's really anything to talk about on the launchpad side other than the update that SpaceX gave us about the jettisoning of the hot stage ring. So I guess we'll address any final questions and then move over to that.
I want to thank 55 Chevy Guy Steve for gifting 5 memberships, as well as SJ becoming a member. That is awesome support. Thank you so much. Let's see. Craneman, question: what about the water in the foundation pit of OLI-2? Is that groundwater? Didn't they drain the soil?
Yeah, so I'm guessing he's talking about the dewatering system over here.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, they drained it, but groundwater, it's not like you just drain it once and it goes away forever. Like as the tide changes, I mean, you can see the water over in this area. It's still going to penetrate through. There's nothing stopping that from happening. So it's like just a continuous thing. As long as this pit is here, water's going to come through. So they got to keep draining it constantly.
Definitely. Respect is asking when the new crane assembling Tower 2, where will it be laid down during launches from Pad A?
I don't know.
I kind of have a thought about that, honestly. I think we're going to see flights 4 and 5 go really quick, and then there's going to be a break.
Me too. Yeah, I think there's going to be a long 6-month, if not longer, break between launches. And the current construction of boosters and ships kind of makes that pretty obvious.
Yeah, it does. I think that's one of the best indicators.
All right. That's about all the relevant questions. Go ahead and continue on with your next segment.
Cool. All right. So yesterday, SpaceX updated their website to essentially their post-launch analysis from Flight 3, and they kind of explained some things. I guess I should just show it right here. I'll go to my own Twitter page really quick. So, let's see. The first thing they mentioned was the fact that during the boost back burn, which we pretty much all knew, that they lost 6 engines during the boost back burn and ended up having to shut down that boost back burn early. They didn't say how early, but I think it was probably only just like a few seconds, based on, well, I guess I can just show it really quick. So the in the Flight 4 schedule, I believe there's after boost back burn at 3 minutes and 54 seconds is when the hot stage ring will be jettisoned, and that is like, oops, okay, I thought I was going to be able to just go through that one frame at a time, but basically the final engine cut out at basically 3:47, and in the schedule for Flight 4, hot stage jettison is at 3:54. So as far as we can tell, which is the only knowledge we have, the only thing we can tell right here is that it shut down like 7 seconds early. But they also mentioned that during the landing burn, obviously the 6 engines that shut down didn't ignite. Let's see. And they had a lower than expected landing burn thrust, which is obvious since most of those engines didn't start up. And then they mentioned that contact was lost 462 meters over the Gulf of Mexico. So that's interesting. It almost makes me think that the booster may have exploded, which they didn't say.
Hit the water.
Did it?
I'm pro. Like if you watch the video, I'm pro that is it hitting the water. We did the math one night, and 162 meters at the speed that it was going when they lost telemetry, it was only about 1.3 seconds from the water. And
Okay.
so I think we actually see it splash the water there. I mean, you see it splash at the bottom, but you don't see the booster separate. So that's what I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that they didn't mention that, but the fact that they didn't mention what happened to it, I guess will come into play later with this next topic. So they also talked about the filter blockage issue, which also happened on IFT2. So they installed additional baffles or like filters into the LOX tank to prevent that from happening, but they clearly still had issues with it. Obviously, it performed better, that they were able to actually perform most of the boost back burn, and it didn't start losing engines until towards the end of the boost back burn. But they mentioned that they will be that they have basically installed additional filtration into what is this, booster 11, 12, booster 12? Yeah. So they've installed further propellant filtration capabilities, and so I guess we should expect that to perform a little bit better on the next launch. As far as ship 28, not a lot of information here, but they confirmed that the valves basically for the RCS system were clogged. I'm guessing they essentially froze and didn't allow them lost the ability to open those valves. And so now they have additional roll control thrusters and basically upgraded hardware to prevent that blockage from occurring. And I'm not going to go into that too much because I think the Ring Watchers are working on an article about that. So I'll let them put that article out, and then we'll get more information on that. But the fun part is that SpaceX has confirmed that they will jettison the interstage, as I said before, 3 minutes and 54 seconds into the flight after the boost back burn. So, this caused a little bit of a disagreement online, specifically because I personally feel like this likely occurred on Flight 3. That's a whole nother discussion. But The reason they're doing this, as they said here, is to reduce the booster's mass for the final phase of flight. So I've talked to a few people, specifically Ryan Hansen Space, kind of believes that one of the reasons why they would want to get rid of it is due to its effect on the performance of the grid fins. And so I guess we can just like take a look at that here, specifically as it's coming in.
About 30
I gotta get rid of the
seconds
volume on
away.
here. So as is approaching this layer of the atmosphere, literally as soon as it passes through this cloud layer right here, is when it really lost its ability to kind of steer itself. Like boom, like immediately. And so Ryan is under the impression that the hot stage ring caused like some aerodynamic instabilities, which the grid fins were not able to recover from.
That's water. The whole bottom of the boosters there, everybody thinks it's exploding, but yet we can see the flamey end of a Raptor lit still. I think it hit the ocean.
I don't know about that, but I'll take your word for it. So Ryan believes that, man, this is a lot to talk about. So essentially, the question is, what did they jettison it on flight 3? And I think they did. Ryan thinks that a reason not to do it is because they wanted to essentially confirm that what happened here, as far as instability, basically confirmed that was actually going to happen. So eventually they're going to want to land with that hot stage ring attached. Therefore, you should attempt to perform your landing burn with the hot stage ring in order to see if the grid fins are able to stabilize it with the hot stage ring attached. And now that they know that didn't work out, for flight 4, they would want to remove that so that they don't have any flight instability as a result of that hot stage ring. Therefore, you get closer to actual or a more ideal performance and a controlled splashdown, because if you want to try and catch it on flight 5, then you're basically going to remove any extra things that you don't need in order to get the ideal test of that controlled landing. So in my opinion, I personally think that the hot stage ring was long gone by this time. We did some little, Space Engineer did some cool comparisons. I was looking at this after we had this conversation, basically on the shadows on the grid fins. And he did a comparison. I'm honestly not sure if the grid fins were in, or the sun that he used in that comparison that he did was in the proper position for this. But essentially what he was showing here is that, okay, this is things that I'm going to come to later. Where is it? So we're trying to decide whether or not the hot stage ring is actually attached. And there's really only one way to know, because, well, two ways. Either SpaceX can tell us, or you got to kind of use what's available. And the only thing available is the shadows on the grid fins and on the booster. And so, and again, I'll go ahead and say that we can't 100% say that this is accurate, because number one, I personally don't know if the sun was in the right position for this, and I don't know if the booster orientation was correct for this. But based on what the Space Engineer was able to show, we can see up here what that shadow on the grid fin would look like if the hot stage ring was attached. And essentially, like, what's causing this ring, this shadow up here, is the fact that the hot stage ring is mostly open space, and so the sun should shine through that. And what you're seeing over here is the top rim of the hot stage ring. And then this is what it looks like without the hot stage ring attached. So you can see the difference in the shadows. Then here on the kind of superimposed over this is what the actual grid fins looked like. And that shadow kind of matches what he's showing it would look like without the hot stage ring present. So as far as any proof that it was jettisoned during Flight 3, this is pretty much all we have. And again, I'm not saying this 100% confirms it, but it leans us into the direction that it was already gone. So now we get into like why you want to do this. So, in my opinion, this really all comes down to the keyword that SpaceX said, which was that they were trying their goal is to reduce the mass of the booster for this phase of flight. So, in my opinion, the only reason to do this is related to the landing tank of the booster. So, let's look at the landing tank. This is a nice little render from Chameleon Circuit, so we can see the landing tank. And those of you who have seen my episode about this probably already know what we're talking about here. But this is the landing tank, which is basically a large header tank for the liquid oxygen. The downcomer of the booster essentially functions as the header tank for methane, so they don't need like a separate tank for that. And that means that for methane, for the methane, you can just add more methane to the tank and to avoid running out of methane. The liquid oxygen, okay, I gotta change how I'm explaining this. So yeah, this is your header tank for methane. This is your header tank for liquid oxygen. So one thing a lot of people were saying is, well, if you need to reduce the mass so you don't run out of fuel, why not just top off the tank more? And you can't. It's not. This is something that a lot of people were saying right here is if you go back and look at the booster before launch, there's clearly more space for them to load additional locks. Same thing with methane. But that means literally nothing because this is not, these main tanks, the main LOX tank is not used for landing. It's the header tank, right? So if this header tank was designed long before hot staging was announced. And matter of fact, I asked Jax to send me a diagram of the production lineup or the status of production after IFT1. So after IFT1, Booster 7, Booster 9, and Booster 10 were all fully stacked. Booster 11 was in the process of being stacked. Its aft section was complete. Booster 12, 13, 14, and 15 all had their aft sections already completed. So in order to, if the weight of your vehicle increases, then in order to have enough fuel to land with that additional weight, you would have to increase the size of that liquid oxygen header tank. And as far as we know, well, we can say for sure that on booster 7 through essentially 12, that definitely did not happen, right? So you have to consider also exactly how much weight is being added here. So they upgraded the engine shielding. They basically doubled the size of the engine shielding for the outer 20 Raptor engines. So that's a significant amount of weight. Then you have the hot stage ring, which is somewhere between 9 and 12 tons.
That's
Officially,
a chunky piece.
What was that?
That's a chunky piece. So a lot of people see it and they see all the cutouts, and it gives the idea that it's light, and it's not light.
It's not at all. It's extremely heavy, and it's officially listed as 9 tons. But in my opinion, it's probably more than that. And the reason for that is because I'm pretty positive that report was filed before they added the additional structural supports on the outside of it. So I don't think that report lists the official size, but either way, in my opinion, it's somewhere between 9 and 12 tons. So you have the shielding, the hot stage ring, you have the massive CO2 tank, 2 of them that got added on, and there are larger, they upgraded the size of the chines or the strakes on the front. Either way, chines or strakes that cover this, so they upgraded the size of that in order to cover this. So that's four mass increases on the booster, which, if those of you who follow me on Twitter saw that, anywhere between 15 and 20 tons added to the booster, if not more. So if it's 20 tons added onto the booster and it's originally, without all this, was a 200-ton booster, now you're at 220 tons, which is a 10% increase. So if you increase and I'm just going to assume here that it's a linear increase, but it's probably not, then you also have to increase the size of this tank by an additional 10%. So if you don't, then you don't have enough fuel to land with a booster that's 20% heavier than the landing tank was designed for. So with that said, you have to do everything possible to reduce the weight in order to actually be able to land the booster. So, I mean, if not, you're just gonna softly crash into the ocean, but you're not gonna bring it to a stop like you need to in order to catch it with the chopsticks. So with that said, the only way you can possibly lighten the booster after before landing is to ditch the hot stage ring. So, in my opinion, whether they ditched it or not on Flight 3, they probably should have, because if you're trying to simulate a soft touchdown, which is basically a simulation of what's going to happen when it's landing on the chopsticks, then it doesn't make sense to leave that hot stage ring attached, because you physically cannot land the booster with that hot stage ring attached. Therefore, you might as well get rid of it. And so this is something, a lot of people have been like, okay, so it's not 100% reusable. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not, but like that's a temporary problem, which will easily be fixed by just simply making a larger landing tank in the future there, so that the additional mass that you've now added onto the booster is being accounted for by the landing tank. And so, yeah, I think I know that's a rather large explanation, but oh, you know what? One more thing I forgot to add. The where is it? Looking for this thing from Ryan Hansen Space. That's not it. I gotta scroll through all these to find it. Where did it go? Okay, so the other source of added weight onto here, the additional slosh baffles that they added on, like we don't fully know what they look like, but assuming that it has some sort of filtration capabilities, it probably covers the entire cross-sectional area of the booster. So and there's 2 rows of them. So this could be another significant source of increased weight. So either way, the booster's far heavier than it was originally designed to be. That's basically what we're getting at here. So yeah, that, in my opinion, explains the need for ditching that hot stage ring. And I know a lot of people were looking for like a full explanation on it. So that's my thinking on it. And I think that really is the only possible reason to need to reduce the mass on the booster for Flight 4. So with that said, I know we're going to have tons of questions on that. So Astro Joe, do we have anything from the chat?
Yeah, a little bit, but I want to thank Jap Kuipers for gifting a membership first. Thanks for that support, keeping RGV flying. James Sanford has a question regarding the IFT-4 time lapse. Sees the ship re-enter 1 minute 40 seconds earlier and go transonic 55 seconds later. Will that extra 2 minutes 35 seconds mean significantly higher heating?
I think I missed the first part of that question.
Sure. The IFT-4 timeline sees the ship re-enter about 1 minute 40 earlier and go transonic 55 seconds later. Will that extra 2 minutes 35 seconds mean significantly higher heating?
No.
I would say no, because hopefully they're able to control the actual reentry, which would, as they kind of talked about in their report, cause there to be higher heating in the first place on Flight 3.
Yeah, and I think the way Elon described it was basically saying that you will have less heating for a larger amount of time versus more heating for a shorter amount of time. And I was looking for that timeline in here, but I'm not sure what I'm looking at. This is weird.
Yeah, diving into orbital mechanics there.
Yeah, I'm definitely not an orbital mechanics specialist, that's for sure.
It's all right. Jeff S. Jones asks, Zach, do you think SpaceX should use double-walled transfer tube to prevent methane from icing up?
I don't think they've. I don't know if they've ever had that problem. I mean, we don't know. I guess one thing we don't know is we don't know if the filtration issue is on the LOX side or methane side, but I think we've all been kind of assuming it's on the LOX side. To tell you the truth, I have no idea how they keep methane from freezing inside of the downcomer. I've never heard. I've heard lots of answers on that, but I don't know a solid answer. I would love for Elon to explain that one day. No idea.
For sure. All right. Well, chatbot seems to have broken. I think it runs off of a time frame base, so it's not working anymore. But I copied this one from chat. William Foss asking, with the close proximity of the second stage Raptors and lack of active cooling, would the hot stage ring even be worth saving, as it's likely to be heavily damaged from the rocket plume?
Right? Exactly. Yeah, we have no idea what the condition of that thing even is. Like, it's probably there's
I imagine it's rough. I
yeah.
mean, when you and any of you, I'm sure most of you know this, but when you see the hot staging and you see the orange fire, that's metal ablating off of that hot stage ring. That's what you're seeing. This orange. If you'll notice, as soon as the ship pulls away, it goes back to where it almost looks like a mist because there's not a lot of oxygen that high, and so I imagine it's wrecked really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sam.
plus we saw in previous documentation they had mentioned ejecting the hot stage ring. So it doesn't surprise me they're doing this.
Yeah, and on that note, that I think a lot of people, that was their main thing. They're like, well, I mean, I will admit that it's very clear in SpaceX's explanation that they're making it sound like a new procedure, and therefore a lot of people are like, well, why would they describe it as a new procedure if they already did it in the past? There's, and this isn't like a dig on SpaceX, like they don't tell us everything. You know what I mean? Like in every single flight that's happened, they've not provided all the details of what's happened. So, and nor should they. I mean, it's like,
Right.
why? What is what does ejecting the hot stage ring matter for an FAA review? Like, if anything, that's something that they would mention to the FAA, and there's absolutely no reason that they have to explain that to us on their website. It might be in the official FAA report, but as we've seen from the Flight 1 report, it's probably heavily redacted, and we will never know. Unless they decide to release that footage, like, we're never going to know. So all of this stuff is like speculation.
Sure. My cue is clear. If there's anything else you want to touch on before we close out the show.
Not really. I haven't gone through the ground photos yet myself, but I don't know if anybody had things they wanted to cover on that. I think one thing we didn't mention was the status of the towel replacement work on ship 29. From what I could tell, these pictures were taken yesterday. It seems like there's still a few missing from the bottom. I think there's maybe one missing right here. The top looks good. Obviously, there's some on the other side that we probably can't see. But yeah, that's the current status of towel replacement on the ship. Oh, here's a full picture. Yeah, I went through all the rest of the ground images and didn't really. Oh, I guess we got some more missing on this side. Nope, that's a lift point.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I saw a couple that were still in the middle section, but not as many as there were.
Yeah. So they're nearly ready to go on that. I don't know if you guys saw anything else in the ground images that I didn't touch on that was worth discussing. Oh, we do know, I guess, that the scaffolding came down today.
Yeah,
Yes.
they were doing that.
Sorry, I cut you off there.
Yeah, they were doing that this morning.
Okay. One step closer. Cool. Well, I guess in that case, if there's no more remaining questions, then we've pretty much reached the end of the show. So yeah, thanks to everybody who's stuck around for those super long explanations at the end. One thing we didn't mention the entire show was that if you guys can do us a favor and hit that like button if you enjoyed the show today. We try not to ask regularly, and in this case, I didn't ask at all. So before you leave, if you can do us a favor and hit that like button, we really appreciate that. And other than that, if you guys, I mentioned earlier, if you want to get access to the 300 aerial and ground images that Mauricio took, I know a lot of you got gifted memberships today, so you should have access to be able to check out those galleries. And the rest of you, if you would like to become a member or a monthly supporter on Patreon, then you can get access to those images as well. And in the process, you will help Mauricio fund these flyovers, because they're certainly not cheap, especially when gas prices fluctuate. So yeah, we appreciate all of the support and all of the both long-time and new members to the channel. So thank you all for helping us continue to do this every week. We greatly appreciate that. And also thank you to Nate and Lawrence for helping out today, and obviously Astro Joe for helping out with the questions and donations. And with that, I will sign off and pass it over to Nate.
Yep, great show. Glad to be a part again. And wow, exciting times. A lot of stuff happening. Can't wait to see all of this change with each day and week as things move forward. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Lawrence.
Thank you, Nate and Zach, for letting me be on here with y'all. And I thank the RGV team. And it's definitely exciting times ahead for the next couple of months.
Most definitely. And thanks for your time and expertise, Zach, Darth, and Nate. Appreciate your time here today, especially going overtime. Thanks, Emlyn, for turning the knobs and pushing the buttons, making it all happen. Thanks, RGV team, and everybody else behind the scenes for catching these awesome photos and making these shows happen. We appreciate y'all. Thanks for all the generous donations and gifts. Awesome chat today. Thanks, y'all. So with that said, most engines cut off. Hot staging confirmed. Love you. Bye.